Hello everybody. I am getting set up. I'm going to just do a sound check before I get started. This is going to be the Trump year 4. Let me update my, I forgot to update that, oops. This is part 1. Got this going. We're going to start. Let me make sure my feeds are going through right. Sometimes it doesn't work the way it's supposed to. I don't know why it's over there. Let's see. Biggest thing is checking is the sound. I don't know. Let me see. Biggest thing is checking is the sound. Okay, sounds like sound's coming through. Okay. This party started, as they say. Anyway, let's go ahead and start, and let me hit play. And I've not watched this, so I don't know what's going to come up, so it's going to have my real-time reaction, so if it's kind of weird, please forgive me.
This is what the end result is.
We don't have enough nurses for these patients.
I can't breathe! George Floyd!
I paid $27 million.
Show us your tax return.
Stop the steal! Stop the steal!
The first American president ever to be impeached twice.
Oh yeah, there was he where he was playing like a child in
Donald
a
Trump, at the
truck.
end of 3 years as US president, had a fair bit of reason to be confident about the position he was in. His popularity had been pretty low. It was bubbling down in the high 30s at the time, but that's not tragic for a US president. Most expect at the end of the third year of their first term in
Wow, just
office,
jump right straight to March.
popularity will be pretty low, but most can expect
do
it to pick up
February.
in the final year. And Donald Trump specifically had a reason for optimism as 2020 began, and that is that
Oh,
the
yeah,
US
that's the previous
economy
year,
was doing
February,
well. In fact, it was on its longest run of growth ever recorded, right through pretty much the Barack Obama period and all of Donald
All he had
Trump's
was the
presidency.
continued growth from
So
Obama.
he had good
He's
reason
riding on Obama's
to figure
coattails the
that he
whole
was in
time.
a pretty good position
was.
running into 2020. Of course, 2020 was no ordinary year.
No, it was not.
And that was going to change things quickly and quite drastically.
Hi everyone, Mark Barden here at Sandy Hook Promise. On December 14th, 2012,
Yeah, those guys. Oh my God.
my 7-year-old son Daniel was shot to death in his first grade classroom at Sandy Hook Elementary School.
I remember these guys. I had a
The
fight
shooter shot and
online
killed
with a bunch of
26
trolls about
individuals in
these
about 4
people.
minutes using
It was
an AR-15
disgusting what people were saying
military-style
about these
assault rifle.
people. I'm sorry, but
There is
these
no
people have lost their
place,
babies.
there's no need, there's no
Nothing
practical
wrong with some
application
people online.
for a military-style assault rifle in civilized society. Please sign the petition and urge Congress to make assault rifles illegal for civilians. There's no practical application in civilized society for assault rifles. We need your help. Please tell Congress to outlaw them now. Thank you.
Oh yeah, that was a commercial. Well, I let that commercial play. I'm okay with letting that one
In
go.
the picturesque Swiss Alps, an impeached president now officially on trial back home.
That whole thing is a hoax. It goes nowhere because nothing happened. The only thing we've done is a great job.
Donald Trump at a World Economic Forum more focused on reigniting a feud with climate activists, notably teenager Greta Thunberg, in the room together for the first time since this moment last year.
To embrace the possibilities of tomorrow, we must reject the perennial prophets of doom and their predictions of the apocalypse.
Our house is still on fire. Your inaction is fueling the flames by the hour.
6,000 kilometres from Davos, Washington, D.C.
Keep silent on pain of imprisonment.
Impeachment trial day one spent debating the ground rules for just the third hearing of this gravity in US history.
A trial without evidence is not a trial. It's a cover-up.
It's outrageous. And the American people won't stand for it, I'll tell you that right now. They're not here to steal one election, they're here to steal 2 elections.
This Senate, like America, is bitterly divided over impeachment, but they won't be able to show it. The 100 senators will have to sit in silence throughout the duration of the trial. No discussions, no mobile phones, just like a jury. A historic trial airing a well-worn narrative, live and late into the night. On the world stage with a domestic battle front and centre.
We have a great case.
Donald Trump wrapped up his Switzerland trip railing against Democrats trying to have him removed from office.
Gerald Nadler,
Yeah,
I've known
he
him a
was
long time.
upset.
He's a
They were
sleazebag.
going to impeach him, and they did.
I'd love to go.
Or tried to. Well, they impeached him anyway.
I don't know. I'd sort of love to sit right in the front row and stare at their corrupt faces.
Democrats still pushing to call witnesses, including former National Security Advisor John Bolton. Trump suggesting he could use executive privilege to stop it.
I don't know if we left on the best of terms. I would say probably not. I thought our team did a very good job, but honestly, we have all the material. They don't have the material.
Indeed, they do have the material hidden from the American people. That is nothing to brag about.
Day two of the trial opened with a prayer for civility before Democrats laid out their case.
He directed the actions of his team. He personally asked the foreign government to investigate his opponent. These facts are not in dispute.
Never before has an impeached president actually been removed from office in this process, and it's unlikely this time. Republicans who control the Senate are so far steadfast in their support for Donald Trump.
They're on a crusade to destroy this man, and they don't care what they destroy in the process of trying to destroy Donald Trump.
Donald Trump back on home soil to take up his
Southern
own
Belle.
fight.
I spent 16 years working in Canberra in Parliament House, covering politics there, in particular the overseas missions and foreign visits by 5 of our prime ministers, and then came to the United States in 2020, specifically then to cover the election and stay on as a US correspondent, and I've been here ever since. The striking thing about Donald Trump is he took a trend of polarisation and he accelerated it. That is, the public had very firm views on Donald Trump from the start. They loved him or they hated him. There'd never really been a figure in US presidential politics as polarising as Donald Trump. He was the first US president in 2016 to come to the White House with no political or military background to speak of.
So yeah, you know what he was doing.
He brought a particular style and a particular background to the White House, and right at the core of that was that he was going to be disruptive. So whenever Donald Trump generated controversy as president, and he did that pretty regularly, his supporters would see it as an affirmation that he was doing the job that they wanted him to do, that he was upsetting the establishment, that he was scattering the chips of politics, if you like, making it different, cleaning out Washington as he promised to do. And for that reason, although his popularity numbers weren't great by the beginning of that 4th year, the beginning of 2020, his base was quite solid.
He was the president's national security advisor until just a few months ago. And now John Bolton, a long-time foreign policy hawk and maverick Washington insider, may be about to turn on his former boss. Extracts from his soon-to-be-published memoir could destroy the very heart of President Trump's defense in his impeachment trial. Most ominously for the White House, moderate Republican senators now want him as a witness, and the party's legendary unity is cracking.
I think it's increasingly likely that the Republicans will join those of us who think we should hear from John Bolton.
Bolton appears to have the crown jewels for investigators. Unambiguous first-person evidence that President Trump was withholding military aid to Ukraine until President Zelensky launched a corruption investigation into Joe Biden's son. The former vice president is a possible rival in the 2020 campaign. To Democrats, this changes everything.
Again.
This is stunning. It goes right to the heart of the charges against the president. Ambassador Bolton essentially confirms the president committed the offenses charged in the first article of impeachment.
Alongside the visiting Israeli Prime Minister, the president said he had no knowledge of the book or its contents.
Nothing was ever said to John Bolton, but I have not seen a manuscript. I guess he's writing a book. I have not seen it.
Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you.
He then brushed aside all questions. As the Senate trial becomes a far more unpredictable affair than anticipated.
Back in the House that impeached him.
The President of the United States!
Refusing to take the hand of the Speaker he hasn't spoken to in months. Donald Trump updated America on the state of its union.
Our union is stronger than ever before.
No, it wasn't. Clearly divided during sitting of Congress. The president touted economic achievements while taunting Democrats who tried to force him from office.
We must always remember that our job is to put America first.
Just the second president to deliver the speech under the shadow of an impeachment trial, Trump staged an early victory lap.
The only victories that matter in Washington are victories that deliver for the American people.
While at the end, Nancy Pelosi sent her own message about the speech in Washington, D.C.
She tore up the speech, as she should.
Well, I was reporting in the United States for what would be the last couple of years of the Trump presidency, but also the start of the COVID pandemic. Well, we knew 2020 was going to be a crucial year, a busy year. It was going to be the election year. Now, Donald Trump and his team were confident the economy was going to be their ticket to a big win. There'd been plenty of division. There'd been plenty of fights with the Democrats after the Democrats took control of Congress, but they were confident they had a good message, but little did they know what was about to hit them and was about to hit the world.
And Trump knew.
I never thought that the shirt I wore to school one spring morning would lead to a federal lawsuit, but the reaction from the adults running my school.
Senate
For just the third time in history, the US Senate decided whether a president should be removed from office.
The Senate is now ready to vote on the articles of impeachment.
The 100 votes falling along party lines until they didn't.
Mr. Romney, guilty.
Republican Mitt Romney breaking ranks.
What the president did was wrong, grievously wrong.
Choosing conscience over party, declaring the president guilty of abuse of power.
I'm sure to hear abuse from the president and his supporters.
It's already happened.
Slick, slippery, stealthy. Mitt Romney had us fooled.
But his vote still brought the Democrats nowhere near the two-thirds majority needed to convict.
It is therefore ordered and adjudged that the said Donald John Trump be, and he is hereby, acquitted of the charges in said articles.
So, as expected, Donald Trump remains in residence here at the White House as the impeachment process ends as it began, with Republicans and Democrats bitterly divided over his actions and his fitness to be president. If Washington could agree on anything today, is that the American people will now decide his fate when they vote in November. The president celebrating by tweeting an old video suggesting he's here to stay forever, before announcing he'll address the nation tomorrow to discuss our country's victory on the impeachment hoax. The Trump impeachment, like so much of what was going on in America at this time, really showed that these were the divided states of America. Trump's supporters were rock solid. They believed him when he said it was a hoax, there was nothing to see, it was a witch hunt on the Democrats' part. And for Democrat supporters, they're saying, well, Trump is clearly someone who needs to be investigated, he's someone who needs to be impeached. So after 4 months of these hearings, it was all over in half an hour. Mitt Romney was, I think, the only Republican who actually voted for impeachment. They couldn't get the two-thirds they needed in the Senate. They were never going to get that, and so the impeachment failed in the Senate, as expected. And Trump was ecstatic. He took a victory lap the next day. He was doing a big press conference for the nation. He held up a copy of the daily paper saying Trump acquitted, and he brandished that at several events that day. And he was emboldened, and this was his message. He said, well, I told you it was a hoax, I told you it was a witch hunt, and I'm now proven to be right. Donald Trump, acquitted, unleashed.
And behind the scenes right here, during all this, he was already aware that the COVID virus
after
was
a
getting out of
5-month
hand
campaign
and
to have him removed from office.
We went through hell.
He knew it.
Unfairly,
He knew it at this point
but nothing
already.
wrong. This is what the end result
He'd already
is.
been told by China what was going on.
You could take that home, honey. Maybe we'll frame it.
Relishing the end of his impeachment trial with a 62-minute verbal victory lap.
It was evil. It was corrupt. It was dirty cops. It was leakers and liars. And this should never, ever happen to another president.
It was presidential fanfare straight into political warfare here at the White House, with no attempt to heal the deep divide in Washington, a sure sign of the bitter election battle still to come. Democrat Speaker Nancy Pelosi in no mood to reconcile at a prayer breakfast, face-to-face for the first time since this moment.
Nor do I like people who say, I pray for you, when they know that that's not so.
He has shredded the truth in his speech. He's shredding the Constitution in his conduct. I shredded his state of his mind address.
Democratic campaign.
Hours before the polls open for the Democrats' primary vote,
Hello, Manchester.
the Trump show rolled into town.
We are going to defeat the radical socialist Democrats. We are going
You
to
lost.
win New Hampshire in a landslide.
He narrowly lost to Hillary Clinton here in 2016. Tonight, Donald Trump was back to take the spotlight and the state.
How could I not attend a rally seeing my hero, Donald Trump, in my own hometown?
Impeached, acquitted, and emboldened.
We have the highest poll numbers that we have ever had. Thank you, Nancy, very much. Thank you.
Seizing on his opponent's bungled vote in Iowa last week.
The Democrat Party wants to run your health care, but they can't even run a caucus in Iowa.
After the debacle of the Iowa caucuses, and with so many candidates still in contention, the primary vote here in New Hampshire has extra significance for the Democrat hopefuls, sorting out who has the momentum and who's fading fast. New polling puts Senator Bernie Sanders in the lead for the first time in the national race with 25%
Wish we could have got
of the
Bernie,
vote.
but we
Biden
did.
dropping back to 17%. Mike Bloomberg surged
We got
to
Joe.
15%, followed by Elizabeth Warren, and Iowa.
But when
winner
Bloomberg
Pete
dropped
Buttigieg,
out, that pretty
a
much
clear
moved
leader
Joe
and
up
a
to the
pack
top.
chasing.
As we went into 2020, obviously the build-up to the election was already underway, and as it works in the American system, Donald Trump's support was rock solid among Republicans. There was no serious contender against him, which is not unusual for a sitting president, that he was going to be the nominee for the Republicans again. But the Democrats had to choose someone, and so, as the Americans do, they have to pick their candidate, and what happens is that there are months of the different candidates basically trying to tear each other down to become the candidate. So they effectively have to attack each other to actually become the candidate. So we had that going on for several months. And one of the clear early leaders was Bernie Sanders, who has been around a very long time, a self-confessed socialist, a reformer. He had some big ideas, and he was leading very early on. Bernie Sanders, I think to a lot of people, he comes across as authentic. He's been very consistent. He doesn't flip-flop. He's very consistent with what he said, calling for reform of healthcare, of how corporations behave in America, and that seemed to be something that really caught on. And it kind of symbolized what was going on in the Democratic Party. There were the progressives like Bernie Sanders, like Elizabeth Warren, who were saying we need to make changes, this is a time for reform, and make big changes. But then there were the moderates like Joe Biden, like Pete Buttigieg, like Amy Klobuchar, who's saying, well, we need to, first of all, we need to beat Donald Trump.
Pete Buttigieg
At one point it seemed that the Democrats may tear each other apart, and if they wanted to beat Donald Trump, their division wasn't going to achieve that.
Another commercial.
Even for the 9th richest man in the world,
Mayor Michael Bloomberg.
money couldn't buy love on this stage.
A billionaire who calls women fat broads and horse-faced lesbians. And no, I'm not talking about Donald Trump. I'm talking about Mayor Bloomberg. Democrats.
Minutes in, a bare-knuckle brawl.
I don't think there's any chance of the senator beating President Trump.
The former New York mayor made his debate debut in Las Vegas, having gambled more than $500 million on his presidential campaign.
We shouldn't have to choose between one candidate who wants to burn this party down and another candidate who wants to buy this party out.
Under siege over his treatment of women.
Mr. Mayor, are you willing to release all of those women from those non-disclosure agreements
It's a
so we
disgrace he
can
don't
hear
even
their
do it.
side of the story?
We have a
Well, you
very
got
few
trounced, though.
non-disclosure agreements.
How many is
Let me
that?
finish.
How many is that?
None of them accuse me of doing anything other than maybe they didn't like the joke I told. And let me just put,
Reveling in the carnage one state over.
And now they have a new member of the crew, Mini Mike. Mini Mike. And I hear he's getting pounded tonight.
President Trump on the West Coast running a counter-campaign and lining his war chest.
You may understand what he's
Looking for a
saying.
jackpot in Las Vegas.
Feels great. We're really
How
encouraged.
did that make it a
Presidential
following? I
hopeful
mean, he is so
spun into
incoherent.
Sin
Nobody-
City.
Don't ramble. Don't make any
The third
sense.
chance for
That's before he
Democrats
got
to
sick.
vote for their candidate and the first caucus since the
Of course, he might have been
Iowa
having early stages at
embarrassment.
that
Our first goal is to get it right.
Soon it was clear Bernie Sanders had the strongest hand,
We have now won the Nevada caucus.
raking in delegates in his second early state victory, just a day after senior intelligence officials revealed Russian operatives were working to secure his nomination.
The president gets very, very upset easily, so don't tell him.
With the senator coming up trumps, the president
Bernie.
piped
He
up.
burned him.
Looks like
Feel
crazy
the burn.
Bernie is doing well in the great state of Nevada. Biden and the rest look weak.
Let's give Trump exactly what he doesn't want. Let's give him you and Joe Biden as the nominee.
The former vice president resisting the bait.
I beat him by going to just moving on.
Move on they will to the South Carolina primary next weekend.
From there, we go to Super Tuesday, and 1/3 of America is going to be voting.
Meaning for candidates, there's still plenty left on the table. In the United States, Amelia Brace, 7 News.
I was there basically for Trump's entire first presidency, so I was there for 4 years.
from the start of 2017. So I don't think life under Trump was ever calm. He was just surrounded by scandal. You have to remember that he was impeached, something that we forget now when speaking about him, because there was just so much going on in terms of the investigation into his alleged collusion with Russia. There was the hush money scandal, which we're still seeing playing out now. There was plenty going on throughout those years, but then at the start of 2020, it really escalated. It was extraordinary to not just cover. As a journalist, I would always say that Trump's good for news because there was just constantly something to speak about. But to live through, I lived in Trump's America, and it was amazing to see how society changed under him, and not necessarily just for the worse. A lot of people considered themselves to be very financially better off. Jobs numbers improved, obviously, until 2020. He had a war with Kim Jong-un and then made friends with him with the weirdest handshake we've ever seen. It never ended, the news value of this president. It was really extraordinary.
The unlikely campaign from the unknown candidate is over.
So tonight, I am making the difficult decision to suspend my campaign for the presidency.
Pete Buttigieg, a 38-year-old millennial mayor, Afghanistan war veteran, the first openly gay candidate to be a serious contender.
The truth is that the path has narrowed to a close.
Despite celebrity endorsement and early win in Iowa.
Mr. Mayor, how confident are you tonight?
Feeling very strong, and we'll see the numbers coming in soon.
It wasn't enough. He couldn't win over minority voters, and a fourth-place finish in the South Carolina primary yesterday sealed his fate. He had an early breakfast with former President Jimmy Carter, then rallied supporters. The timing critical, just 2 days before 14 states vote on a Democratic nominee in America's Super Tuesday.
Pete Buttigieg's campaign was praised by his Democrat rivals as inspiring, history-making, but its end helped them all. The question now is, in a slimmed-down field, where do his votes go?
Bernie Sanders remains the frontrunner, but now Joe Biden could position himself as the new moderate alternative to socialist Sanders. Donald Trump predicting this is the real beginning of the Dems taking Bernie out of play. No nomination again.
And here's Super Tuesday.
On the biggest polling day before November's election,
it's always an exciting and a hopeful time.
5 candidates were vying for the votes of Democrats in 14 states. A crucial clash between progressive frontrunner Bernie Sanders
How are you doing?
Good.
and the moderates trying to stop him.
We are not only taking on the corporate establishment, we're taking on the political establishment.
Former Vice President Joe Biden drawing first blood.
It feels good, and we're feeling optimistic.
Staging a southern sweep.
Joe Biden will win.
Setting the scene for a Super Tuesday surprise.
It's a good night. Joe did a good job.
And it seems to be getting even better.
But there was a Sanders resurgence in delegate-rich Texas. The biggest prize, California, also appearing to go Bernie's way. The biggest loser, Mike Bloomberg, taking only American Samoa after spending more than $500 million campaigning.
Joe Biden needed to prove tonight that he's still in this race. He's done that, but with no overwhelming winner, this Super Tuesday has simply shown the battle to be the Democratic nominee for president isn't over yet.
Whoever it is, I don't care. I really don't care. Whoever it is, we will take him on.
The president and the nation watching and waiting.
People either loved him or loved to hate him. And I don't think that's just Trump. Americans are much more polarized in their politics than we are. People are either a Democrat or a Republican, and you hear very few who are in between or undecided or are not willing to tell you about what they believe in and why they're right and you're wrong. So Trump just gave them either a target or a hero, and people really backed him in or worked against him, and it just created this real powder keg of a country where everything felt incredibly volatile.
A billionaire bid for the White House goes bust.
I knew we didn't have much of a chance, but we did it anyways.
Spending close to $1 billion on a campaign that won him just American Samoa.
See, this is
one thing this whole thing has shown is you can't buy an election. It's a beautiful thing.
But Mike Bloomberg pledged to keep his checkbook open for Joe Biden.
I hope you will join me in working to make him the next president of the United States of America.
Supercharged after his Super Tuesday success, with Bernie Sanders now his only real rival to take on Donald Trump.
What we can't let happen
in the next few
I hope
weeks
you're enjoying.
is let this primary turn into a campaign of negative attacks.
And I do not want this campaign to degenerate.
After her dismal Super Tuesday performance, Elizabeth Warren is now deciding the future of her campaign under pressure to drop out and endorse fellow progressive Bernie Sanders before the next state's vote next week.
It's a documentary about
Her supporters still cheering, but Elizabeth Warren was stepping down.
I will not be running for president in 2020, but I guarantee I will stay in the fight.
Last year, she briefly led the polls, known for detailed ideas on healthcare, education,
a lot of good things, but I didn't think she actually had a chance
and confronting her fellow candidates.
A billionaire who calls women fat broads and horse-faced lesbians. And no, I'm not talking about Donald Trump. I'm talking about Mayor Bloomberg. I think you called me a liar on national TV.
But voters didn't respond in the primaries. On Super Tuesday, she lost her home state, Massachusetts. Crucially, she did not endorse either Joe Biden or Bernie Sanders today. Sanders telling her supporters he's their new home. The once diverse Democratic field losing its last woman with a real shot, now left with 2 white men in their late 70s.
One of the hardest parts of this is all those little girls who are going to have to wait 4 more years.
The race was very interesting. Pete Buttigieg won one of the primaries. Bernie Sanders had won primaries. But as things moved on, and as we led up to Super Tuesday, when a great many states cast their votes, and that's usually the one that says this is where people are thinking, Bernie Sanders was still a favourite, but by then, some of the other candidates who had got a lot of attention had dropped out. Pete Buttigieg dropped out. He endorsed Joe Biden. Amy Klobuchar dropped out. She endorsed Joe Biden. And so it was sort of at that point that Joe Biden was starting to get the momentum. He was starting to do well in the primaries. And where the Democrats had sort of been wrestling with, are we going to go progressive or are we going to go moderate? I think it started coalescing around the idea is that we need to beat Donald Trump. And I think what people were discovering or deciding was that Joe Biden, being moderate, being the safe pair of hands, polling well among minority voters in the US, seemed to be the candidate who could beat Donald Trump. And in the end, he was the one who triumphed over
this is
Senator
still March. We haven't had COVID actually announced. Now, here we go. This is where things went really bad for
President Trump.
My fellow Americans,
addresses the nation with a plan to halt a runaway train.
we will be suspending all travel from Europe to the United States for the next 30 days.
Just over 48 hours notice for passengers. The ban does not include the UK or trade and goods, and there will be exemptions for US citizens.
Older Americans should also avoid non-essential travel.
Financial stimulus is coming. Plans for low-interest loans, deferred tax payments, and payroll tax relief.
The virus will not have a chance against us.
Doctors predict it could infect 150 million Americans. And there are concerns for the president's own health.
I am confident that by counting and continuing,
closures are moving fast. Team owners finding out mid-game the NBA season is suspended.
This seemed more like out of a movie than reality.
A Utah player tested positive. In Italy, the national address came via Facebook. Its prime minister now ordering all non-essential shops to shut down. Globally, it's a domino effect. Hungary in a state of emergency. Germany warning 70% of people could be infected. In Denmark, all schools are closed. Classrooms also shut in Peru. Canada, $1 billion plan to save the economy. And in Iran, their vice president now has the virus. Washington state banning anything with more than 250 people.
The penalties are you might be killing your granddad if you don't do it.
Both he and his administration tried to downplay the seriousness of the virus. Of course, you have to give him grace that at the start we didn't know how bad it would be. It hit America much earlier than Australia, when Australia had a chance to watch the rest of the world affected. By the time it got to New York, really, it was just China and maybe Italy that we were seeing these cases. We didn't quite know how bad it was. It was scary. But a lot of people liked that Trump was downplaying it. It was reassuring. It's what they wanted to hear. And if there's one thing we know about him being a populist, he likes to say what people want to hear.
The cascade of closures happened at a breathtaking rate.
Cannot be gathered together We cannot be in close proximity to each other.
These are our parents, our grandparents, our neighbors, our coworkers, and the action you take or don't take could decide the fate of their lives.
Across America, restrictions on gatherings forcing Disneyland and Universal Studios to shut their gates for the first time since 9/11.
To see Disney shut down is, just mind-blowing.
We had a choice out of going to France or here.
Good time to go. There wasn't nobody there.
Stay ahead of the coronavirus, so we came here first.
In New York, Broadway, which has defied wars and recessions to keep the lights on, shuttered, plays and musicals suspended for 32 days.
And you bought them here, we can refund them here.
There is a lot of anxiety amongst the theatre community around what it means for their livelihoods.
Anxiety too on Wall Street, Donald Trump's overnight address.
My fellow Americans.
Doing little to calm a nation's nerves, a travel ban angering European allies as it emerged he too came in contact with a coronavirus patient, a Brazilian official seen beside the president at Mar-a-Lago just days ago. The virus putting Canada's Prime Minister in lockdown, his wife tonight testing positive. Crippling almost every professional sports league. Basketball, baseball, hockey and soccer seasons over. Cruises too. Princess halting operations of its 18 ships globally for 2 months as the world wades into a crisis uncharted.
Incubation container.
Ushering America into a new phase of a global crisis.
I am officially declaring a national emergency.
President Trump unlocking $80 billion to fight coronavirus as he faces questions over his own health.
I didn't say I wasn't going to be tested.
Are you going to be?
Most likely, yeah.
The town of New Rochelle opened drive-through testing under the eyes of the National Guard. In Manhattan, a new reality of eerily empty theatres, wary crowds in Times Square.
Why are you wearing the mask?
For my protection.
I think it's going to spread regardless. It's just a way to slow down the spread.
There's still people not wearing masks at that point.
But there's growing frustration over a shortage of test kits.
I hope it's just a cold. I would love to do the corona test, but there just isn't one.
To those families and citizens who are worried and concerned for themselves and their loved ones, I want you to know that your federal government will unleash every authority, resource, and tool at its disposal.
The emergency declaration is clearly what the markets wanted to hear while Donald Trump was speaking here on Wall Street. The Dow Jones was soaring, almost making up for yesterday's biggest drop since the 1987 crash, but still ending the week well down on where it began.
Chaos continuing at supermarkets and airports.
I remember,
as the president's travel ban on Europe kicked in. Amongst the darkness, final day of joy at Disneyland.
It was fun, but you can tell that the atmosphere is kind of different.
The year's sporting calendar in limbo. The Masters and Boston Marathon postponed. The president declaring Sunday a national day of prayer. Presidential precautions before a White House briefing on the virus, temperature checks that no one in the room showed symptoms. Donald Trump finding out for sure.
I also took the test last night,
He got the all clear from doctors, but still faced scrutiny for ignoring advice to stop shaking hands.
Just relax. People come up to me, they shake hands, they put their hand out. It's sort of a natural reflex. Shaking hands is not a great thing to be doing right now, I agree.
The US expanding its Europe travel ban to include all foreigners from the UK and Ireland, returning Americans facing massive queues for screening.
We're probably a week or two away from this really becoming a major epidemic across the entire nation.
The Pentagon even stopping its personnel travelling within the United States.
Well, if you don't have to travel, I wouldn't do it.
In Aspen, Colorado, 13 Australians remain in lockdown, 10 positive for COVID-19, 3 refusing to be tested. Friend Marsha Griffin says she's lucky not to be infected.
I arrived just a little after their parties happened, so as much as I would have loved to have been at their parties, I'm very glad in this instance that I wasn't there. But I am worried for my friends because they've been locked up for a week.
There have been long lines at the few drive-through testing stations set up so far.
We will see more cases and we will see more suffering and death.
In virus-hit Seattle, hospitals already under strain.
They're already starting to ration supplies here. There just isn't enough to keep going for very long.
With warnings of virus testing scams after suspected fake test kits were seized in Los Angeles.
Here in New York, 2 firefighters have now tested positive for coronavirus, and it means around 100 of their colleagues have had to go into isolation. It highlights a challenge for authorities how to keep a city safe if a growing number of firefighters, paramedics, police officers have to go into quarantine. Church services have been cancelled. Major retailers like Apple closing.
Just coming in, you can hear it's like an area with quite, there's people around, but there's not many people around.
As supermarket staff deal with panic buying and aggression in the aisles.
As human beings, we got to put together at a time like this. So I need you guys to calm down.
8 days after shutting down his country, Donald Trump hinted he might open it again.
Our country wasn't built to be shut down.
The president losing patience with social distancing and the effect it's having on the economy.
We're not going to let the cure be worse than the problem. This was a medical problem. We are not going to let it turn into a long-lasting financial problem.
Saying he'll soon announce a date, restrictions will be wound back.
We have to get open and we have to be...
he found that money was more important than people. Can't keep it closed for the next, for years.
Okay, this is going away.
As his experts warn, it's not.
I want America to understand, this week it's going to get bad.
We're trying to make it so that it's much less bad.
Grand Central Station normally packed, but this is what New York's new rush hour looks like. Even with people staying at home, the number of confirmed infections continues to rise, with more than 1 in 10 COVID-19 cases around the world now here in the United States. Hotspots bracing for the worst as the nation notched up 100 deaths in a 24-hour period for the first time. The surge bringing the national death toll to more than 500.
That was 500 in the first month. Now here's the commercial. Pointing fingers. Here's where he tried to blame everybody else and not take responsibility
battling an invisible enemy at home.
We're going to have a couple of weeks, starting pretty much now, but especially a few days from now, that are going to be horrific.
Donald Trump is now pointing the finger abroad.
I'm not an accountant from China.
The president publicly accusing China of misleading the world on the early extent of COVID-19.
The response team who was in China,
a little bit on the late side,
Wuhan lab, whose responsibility was to make sure this didn't happen.
The White House briefed by US intelligence agencies that Beijing underreported both cases and deaths, robbing other nations of valuable early information.
Long before the world learned in December that China was dealing with this, and maybe as much as a month earlier.
Yeah, but we had a team there that was supposed to stop that.
China's official reporting suggests just over 82,000 cases, and 3,300 deaths, numbers no longer rapidly rising. Compare that to the US, confirming more than 215,000 cases and more than 5,000 fatalities.
We could have been better off if China had been more forthcoming.
The tide of infections has prompted more states to issue stay-at-home orders. But with 9 out of 10 Americans already on lockdown, Donald Trump says he is considering some domestic air restrictions to help stem the spread.
Job was to make sure stuff like this didn't happen. Every single flight on every single airline. That's a very, very rough decision. But we are thinking about hot spots where you go from spot to spot, both hot.
Now including Florida, its governor blaming February's Super Bowl for a rapid spread.
It was very clear from the early days that he intended to blame China. He called it the China virus repeatedly, despite being encouraged not to, because it was causing racism and Asian Americans were being targeted in the street. I think for him it was a way to deflect blame from himself, not that he was ever to blame for COVID, obviously, but for his handling of it, to say that this isn't my fault, it's China's fault. He also repeatedly said it's something we could never have expected or prepared for, even though health experts were saying that in fact it's something that the government was warned of with SARS and other viruses in the years prior. He did repeatedly, constantly bring it back to China as a way, I think, to push the blame from himself.
With his sights set on recovery, Donald Trump met those who've recovered.
They're very brave. Some were right at the edge. They thought it was over.
Hosting COVID-19 survivors at the White House.
How are you now?
I'm great.
Would you say 100%?
I would say 85.
Stay away from me. Stay away. Keep her away.
As he further distanced himself from the World Health Organization.
Today I'm instructing my administration to halt funding of the World Health Organization.
Accusing the global body of
stupid.
mismanaging the coronavirus
people that we need
crisis
to work
by
with
pushing
to make sure we
Chinese
get this thing taken
misinformation,
care of.
leading to a
Didn't
20-fold
like it 'cause they
increase
had
in
things to say
cases
about it that he
worldwide.
didn't want to
Those
hear.
tasked with protecting us by being truthful and transparent failed to do so.
The
being
coronavirus
truthful
toll
and transparent.
continues
You
to
just didn't like what
soar
they
in
had
the
to
United
say.
States. The country has now seen more than 26,000 lives lost.
Also,
with
you
a
didn't
big
understand
spike
what
today
they said,
here
let's
in
be
New York
fair.
City. Authorities revising the death toll up more than 3,700 as they now include
how many
people who
deaths?
died
By April,
before they could be tested.
In California, 7 crew on
26,000
board the
people
Navy
died.
hospital ship
By
Mercy
April.
have tested positive. But as America's curve continues to flatten, the president faced a backlash over his declaration he will decide when each state reopens.
When somebody's the president of the United States, the authority is total.
Do we want a king or do we want a president? And we opted for a president. So that statement cannot stand, period.
Donald Trump now says the decision will be left to governors and that
He has
some
no
will
idea what
make
he's
it
doing.
before the end of the month.
Same thing happened if you ever got back in. Full body cleansing. Oh my God, I
Spring
remember
and
that.
talk of
These
warmer
people are
weather
freaking
as a
morons.
virus weapon.
I hope people enjoy the sun, and if it has an impact, that's great.
Homeland
here
Security
we go.
lab results matching other research suggesting heat, humidity and direct sunlight kills coronavirus more quickly.
Supposing we hit the body with a tremendous, whether it's ultraviolet or just
Yeah,
very
what's hit
powerful
us with
light.
ultraviolet light?
That is a treatment.
Experiments showed
Bleach
causes
will kill
cancer.
the virus in 5 minutes. Isopropyl alcohol will kill the virus in 30 seconds.
prompting this from the president.
And then I see the disinfectant, where it knocks it out in a minute, 1 minute. And is there a way we can do something like that by injection inside or almost a clean?
I would caution against the injection of
Let's
disinfection.
inject
Little
disinfectant into the
sunshine for
human body.
American workers, the unemployment
He's a
line
moron.
growing by another
He's a
4.4
moron.
million people this week. 26 million
Yeah,
now
he
jobless
crashed our
due to
economy, too. That's how many
coronavirus.
people lost their
Protected
jobs.
politicians voting nearly $800 billion in additional emergency aid.
Finally, help is on the way.
More evidence today. The number of cases we know about could just be the tip of the iceberg. First results from the testing of 3,000 New Yorkers for COVID-19 antibodies has found 1 in 7 of them had been exposed to the virus. That would work out to 2.7 million people having had it just in this state, the equivalent of the number of currently known cases around the world.
He definitely had a focus on reopening the economy. He was very worried
All
about
he was worried
things
about
like
was the
unemployment
economy.
going
He did
through
not
the
care
roof,
how many people were
given
dying.
that was something that he had.
So his main
built his
focus was to
presidency on.
try
He
to
was
prop
incredibly
up the
proud of what
economy
he'd done to
and
the
the stock
economy.
market.
In
All he
saying
did,
that,
and
he
he
still
did
stood up
PR.
every day with
He was basically
the
running
health advisors, similar to
instead
what
of
we saw
doing it
here.
as a health
He regularly
crisis,
disagreed with them right
he
in
was
front of
doing it as a
them.
PR
I'm sure you remember
crisis
Dr.
and
Anthony
trying to keep
Fauci.
his
They were
image looking good.
at war in front of our cameras
Well,
every
I
day.
guess
It
his
was
image,
incredible to
it
watch,
failed.
especially
It
the
didn't
day
work out for him either.
Trump just thought out loud whether you could perhaps ingest disinfectant to treat COVID. And people were immediately clarifying on every news program all over Twitter saying, do not do that. Not only will it not help COVID, you could seriously hurt yourself. When he said it though, you could see the thought bubble. It wasn't something that he'd come in saying, I'm going to tell people to do this. He was just thinking out loud, which is what he did in press conferences. Not intending to be dangerous or malicious or to give people the wrong information, but by thinking out loud in a health crisis, you inadvertently say things that can be really dangerous.
Yeah, he was, like she said, he was
Popeyes
just
had the
thinking
best
out
of
loud.
both wings.
Anything
Our
that popped in
juicy
his
chicken
head,
is
he just
marinated
said
to
it
perfection
because
with 2 distinct
he
twists on
didn't
all
know what
6
he was
flavors.
talking about.
Whether you prefer our spicy bone-in.
Clarifying his comments in the Oval Office.
I was asking a very sarcastic question.
Donald Trump claimed he was joking when he said this.
And I see the disinfectant.
Nah, this is where he's trying to
where it
walk
knocks
it
it
back.
out in a minute, 1 minute. And is there a way we can do something like that by injection inside? I was asking a question sarcastically to reporters like you, just to see what would happen.
What did happen was widespread backlash.
He was being
The
dead
president is
serious
not
when he
listening
said
to
that.
medical experts, and I don't know which ones he is listening to, if any.
The manufacturer of Dettol even releasing a statement saying under no circumstance should its products be administered into the human body.
I think he just saw the information at the time, immediately before the press conference, and he was still digesting
people.
that information.
Coronavirus is everywhere here in New York, and so is the hunger. With millions out of work, lines at food banks like this one have never been longer. The need never greater.
Really
13-year-old Saul Flores queuing outside his own school.
In school, they teach us about epidemics and stuff like that, and then living in one is like really terrifying.
Collecting food for his family out of work and quarantining at home.
We're like getting worried about how much, if it's gonna be enough.
In Atlanta, the lines were at the Speedway.
That's the food
Georgia,
lines
one of
Trump's
3
time.
states
We
cautiously
wanna go back to
joining
that,
the race
food
to
lines,
reopen.
Where you have to wait in line to get food.
After weeks at the
In your
lectern,
car.
Thank you very much, everyone.
Donald Trump skipped his
This is
daily
what
briefing,
Trump's
explaining his absence
time
on
was
Twitter.
like.
What is
Don't
the
kid yourself
purpose
about
of
what it
having
was.
White House news conferences when the lamestream media asks nothing but
They
hostile
have this
questions and
delusion
then
that
refuses
everything
to
was some
report
sort of
the
weird
truth
utopia.
or facts accurately?
This is the truth. This
Not
is what it
worth the
was
time
when he
and
was
effort.
president. It
There
was
are
a
suggestions
complete
the White
and utter
House might
disaster.
scale back news conferences after the president questioned injecting disinfectant as a coronavirus treatment.
I would suggest the media not take him out of context. I think this president
He was
has
not taken out of
consistently
context.
said
We heard
from
what
the
he
beginning
said.
that
In
people
context,
should
it was
consult
not
with their
good.
doctors.
Their warning of another
He was
grim
not joking.
American
He is a
milestone.
moron.
Almost
He will get
1
people
million
killed.
cases of COVID-19, a quarter of the world's deaths, with more than 53,000 lives lost. Still, the nation is slowly reopening. New York's governor planning a brief excursion.
Get out of the house, hike until they are fatigued and exhausted, because exhaustion is our friend.
Californians
like that guy
are
either,
countering a heat
but-
wave in the waves as temperatures hit the
Tomo should have been
mid-30s.
investigated. He actually did some bad stuff too.
Seems kind of early to me.
For those who
See, I'm
couldn't
that
make
person.
it
I
to
don't
the
like
beach,
that.
the
I
city
don't like
set
them
up
either.
so-called cooling
That guy,
centres,
anyway.
air-conditioned town halls
If somebody does something
where
wrong,
those
I don't
on
care what party
lockdown
they're in.
could safely escape the heat.
It's kind of hard to stay inside. It's very tempting to get out of the house.
And tempting to let safety measures slide.
When you put your mask on, it's just like, it's hot, it's hard to breathe.
Well, you either put the mask on, I don't know, die. Or get sick, be
Defiant
crippled. Your choice.
and demanding the lockdown ends now.
Freedom and liberty.
They hate
We're losing it.
lockdowns. I don't know
Close
what
to
the deal was
1,000
with that,
Americans
but
gather
sorry,
outside the
kinda had
house
to do
of
it.
Minnesota's governor. No masks, no distance, in a united mutiny over restrictions they say are killing their livelihoods.
Don't tread on us, we're the taxpayers.
Across the country, the same cry.
Everybody come back May 1st.
They have support from Washington. In multiple tweets, President Trump called for states to liberate.
And if you look at some of the states you just mentioned,
It was affecting the
it's
economy.
too
That's the
tough.
only
A
thing he cared
day
about.
after
He didn't care if
announcing
it
the
killed
states would
a
call
whole
the
bunch of
shots
people.
on when
That
to
didn't
reopen.
matter.
This
The
is
economy
just
had to be
grossly
saved.
irresponsible, and it is dangerously bombastic because it inspires people to do dangerous things.
These are people expressing their views. I see where they are, and I see the way they're working.
Yeah,
And
well,
they seem to be
people are
very
expressing their
responsible
views, but you
people
need
to
to
me.
tell them
Today's
the truth,
protest
and you
came
didn't.
as the nation recorded
'Cause you
yet
didn't
another
care.
record death toll. More than 4,500 lives lost in just 24 hours.
Yeah,
That's almost
4,000.
double the
There were
previous
thousands
week.
of people dying
But Donald
a day.
Trump claims the
Thousands.
local governor is ungrateful for federal assistance,
But I'm saying thank you for doing your job.
telling Andrew Cuomo to spend more time doing and less time complaining.
If he's sitting home watching TV,
Now, Como
maybe he
didn't do
should
as
get up
great a
and go
job
to work,
either. He
right?
did cause a lot of people to
Mutiny
get killed.
in Michigan. Armed with flags and guns, protesters storm their state
Yeah, these are
capitol
what you
building.
call terrorists. They're not patriots.
Demanding
If you're standing
access
with a
as
gun,
leaders
you're there to
debated
intimidate people
extending the
for a
emergency
political reason.
lockdown.
That is the
Police
definition of
blocked the
terrorism.
entry, but eventually angry voters made it in, standing in the gallery with rifles as members below, some wearing bulletproof vests, voted against keeping people at home any longer. Their president says he's seen the evidence of where this crisis began inside a Wuhan lab.
Yes, I have. Yes, I have. We should have the answer to that in the not-too-distant future, and that will
He's trying to say it started
determine
in
a
the
lot
Wuhan
how I
lab,
feel about
where
China.
we
In
had
New York,
people.
they're focused on containing the
I'm gonna
horror
pause this.
still
This is something I'm
unfolding.
gonna have to pull up.
Unrefrigerated.
Let me find it. Let me find. That's something else. Hold on. better hope that wasn't from a Wuhan lab. Let me see if I can find the video. Response team. I believe it was in 2018. Where he did a press conference on it. There's a video from 4 years ago. Let me see.
No matter who you are, there are times it can be tough to be yourself when you have severe.
I don't like having thousands of people around when you don't need them.
There we go.
DRC is adversely affected by malaria, and the United States is committed to doing everything we can to help your government and your clinicians with commodities, with training, so that we can reduce the sickness and the mortality.
Trump did when he was in office in 2018. They didn't have this in this documentary, but I'm adding it in. This is what they did before Trump.
So here's the bottom line. Patients can beat this disease, and we can beat this disease. But we have to stay vigilant.
That's before
we have to work
COVID.
together at every level, federal, state, and local.
This is what a real
And we have to
president
keep
does
leading
when
the
they're in
global
charge.
response, because the best way to stop
make sure
this
they have a
disease,
team
the
in
best way to
place.
keep Americans safe, is to stop it at its source in West Africa.
Yeah, that was the original. This is what they did. This is how they worked. Trump fired these people. And we also had them in China. And he tried to cut the budget over and over again. The Congress blocked him.
Some of the people we cut, they haven't been used for many, many years, and if we ever need them, we can get them very quickly. And rather than spending the money, and I'm a business person, I don't like having thousands of people around when you don't need them. When we need them, we can get them back very quickly.
That we could. Yeah, you don't try to hire the fire department back when your house is already on fire. Because he's an idiot. He has no idea how any of this stuff works.
I will never hesitate to take any necessary steps to protect the lives, health, and safety of the American people. I will always put the well-being of America first.
No, he didn't.
If we are vigilant and we can reduce the chance of infection, which we will significantly impede the transmission of the virus.
He completely failed at that.
The virus will not have a chance against us.
And that was 4 years ago from this group. Let's get back to the documentary.
President Trump has been trying to rewrite the timeline on his
containing
coronavirus
60
response.
or more bodies found outside a Brooklyn funeral home after neighbors complained about a
In
foul
2014,
smell.
the Obama-Biden administration put together a global
It's a shame. These are people, family members.
in the White House National
Awful
Security
discovery
Council.
here, a sign of the strain on New York's funeral homes right now, with more than 17,000 lives lost to the coronavirus in the city. Some places say they've seen more demand in the last month than they normally get in a year.
Why on earth did they not either alert the state, who regulate them, or go to their
NYPD do something.
An investigation underway, but no charges have been laid.
Huntington Beach, California, mid-pandemic.
You're in the sunshine, you're in fresh air.
A lot of them are
You're
dead.
healthier than wearing a mask.
Crowds spill onto the road,
They actually
restless,
ended up causing themselves
infuriated
to
over
die.
business
Out here
and
jumping
beach
around being
shutdowns.
morons.
Hopefully it won't get to the point where we need to put down the signs and flags and pick
Other
up weapons.
disability down too.
But that's what
because
we
they
have the
can't
Second
breathe.
Amendment for.
Inside this blue state rally, we meet
Virus
Trump
does some
loyalists.
major damage to
Are you concerned by the
Really
health
don't wanna
risks
get
of gathering together in a large group out here today?
No, not really. No, it's the sunshine, that kills the virus, I think.
And skeptics.
My children are not at risk because they have an immune system.
Would you give your children a
This is
coronavirus vaccine?
definitely a live
Absolutely not.
reaction, so
Absolutely not.
myself,
Not ever.
really
While
rough,
the
so I do
federal
apologize
government's
for that.
social
I'm doing it in
distancing
real time.
guidelines have lapsed, state governments like California are under pressure to ease restrictions, all while cases
we
keep growing.
barely a
More
month
than
into it.
30
We
states
needed
are
to have
lifting
a
restrictions over the
full-on,
weekend, including Texas,
true
where
lockdown
restaurants
for at
and
least 3
retailers
months.
are operating at
I know it would've been
25%
hard. It would've hurt
capacity,
a lot of
while in
people,
Washington,
unfortunately.
We're going to be having
But
some
it would've
really incredible
controlled
results.
the
and old
virus and it
drugs
would've got it
offering
under
new
control.
hope,
True
antiviral
lockdowns,
medication
not
remdesivir, given
not the
emergency approval to
somewhat,
help COVID
I'm a
patients.
little inconvenient lockdowns that we had.
to be the key
the lockdowns we did were
coming
like
around.
Early results suggest
extremely
patients who took the drug
blocked.
improved 31%
I've heard what they did
faster
in the
than
Philippines
those
for my
taking a
family there,
placebo.
and
So
dear
there were
God,
states which were also hit hardest in
if
the
they
beginning.
did that here,
shut
these
down
people
in,
would have
in a
lost
much
their
more
minds.
strict lockdown to what I lived in Australia the year later. I was here for
we didn't have
2021
anything
in
really
Australia. It
enforcing
was incredibly
lockdowns
strict
at
in
all.
New York,
Just the stores said,
California, those sorts of states.
we don't want you people coming in
you have
this
to
many
remember
at a
only
time.
half of Americans
And
were
you had to
ever
wear
in
a mask.
lockdown. Some states never
And
locked
stay
down.
away from each other.
And I had a bizarre
That was it.
experience
You
where
couldn't be
I
running
was
on
sent
top of
from
other
LA,
people.
complete lockdown. Got to the
Which, personally,
LAX in 10 minutes, never
pandemic
happened.
or not, I really
Flew to
don't like
Florida
people like on top of
and
me
got there
anyway.
late and thought, well, I just won't have food tonight. because
Unless they're
how am
family.
gonna
I don't
get
care about
food?
family, but if you're
I
not
saw a
family,
bar open and I thought, oh, maybe they're
back
doing
off.
takeaway. Went
Don't
over.
get up
There were just
up in my
people
face.
having beers at the bar, and it was like going to an
some
alternate
people, my
universe.
family
Because
don't want
by
my
then
face.
I'd been locked up for 3 months or so, and then a week later, I think Florida was the new hotspot. There were just states that just didn't do it. They just refused to. They didn't even consider it, and that's again why I think Americans live such different lives in COVID. The impact on jobs and the economy and health was so different.
Yeah, we
because
put too much emphasis on
obviously the
jobs and
states
the
that
economy
locked
than we
down
did
had
on the lives
more
of
of an
our
economic
fellow
impact, but
Americans.
perhaps a better outcome
really didn't care.
health-wise than these states that didn't, and
Which
saw
is
these
sad.
huge
We
spreads
should've done better than
and
that.
spikes in deaths. You could go out one day and get yelled at for not wearing a mask, and go out the next and get yelled at for wearing one, and you would know based on who was yelling at you which party they backed, basically.
Yeah, there was a lot of drama with COVID.
Big signs to make a big point about testing.
We have met the moment, and we have prevailed. We've prevailed on testing is what I'm referring to. That was with regard to testing.
Yeah, we
Donald
got
Trump
tests.
insisting there's enough available to help reopen workplaces, just as his own is exposed to coronavirus.
I don't think the system broke down at all.
Yeah,
One
we
person
did very good
tested
on
positive,
the
surprisingly,
test right
because
away.
the previous day tested negative. It can happen. It's the hidden enemy.
Officials scrambling to
take
check
much to get
who the
infected.
Vice
You won't even
President's
know you're
infected
infected.
aide had been in contact with. 3 top health officials and a state governor now taking precautions as White House staffers are told to wear masks.
Yeah, I did. I required it.
Donald Trump accused
he
some
just
states
admitted
of
he
not
required
being
his staff
aggressive
to wear
enough
masks. He
when it
wouldn't wear
comes
one
to
himself,
restarting
though.
their economies, as here in New York, the governor outlined plans that would see some
Because
parts
he
of the
is,
state
well, a
start
big
getting back
baby.
to normal within days.
In California, Elon Musk defying a local government order, tweeting, "Tesla is restarting production today against Alameda County rules. I will be on the line with everyone else. If anyone is arrested, I ask that it only be me." As the US death toll passes 80,000, the president was asked why he keeps touting America's testing.
Maybe that's a question you should ask China.
Sir, why are you saying that to me specifically?
I'm
That I
telling
should
you.
ask
I'm not
China?
saying it specifically to anybody.
There were more questions, but the testing was over.
He's the face of America's coronavirus fight, but Anthony Fauci and Donald Trump are on different pages.
Look, he wants to play all sides of the equation.
Disputing the White House infectious disease experts' warning that it was too soon to ease the lockdown.
He did a lot of damage to the country. No, Fauci saved a lot of lives. This idiot did a whole lot of damage to the country.
You know, it's just, to me, it's not an acceptable answer.
The call for caution on schools particularly clashing with the president's economic plan.
Driving to school and some bad things can happen too.
America's central bank, the Federal Reserve, today outlined its plan, calling for additional stimulus to avoid a long-lasting recession.
This reversal of economic fortune has caused a level of pain that is hard to capture in words.
As the president labelled the latest $4.7 trillion proposal,
DOA, dead on arrival.
Almost all states have started easing restrictions. Here in Los Angeles, the city reopening its beaches for the first time in 6 weeks as car maker Tesla prevailed in its standoff to reopen its factory. Billionaire owner Elon Musk had threatened to move the company's headquarters if he didn't get the green light to open. Taking aim.
They should have never let this happen.
Laying blame.
It was either stupidity, incompetence, or it was deliberate.
Just months after signing a new trade deal.
The ink was barely dry, and the plague came over, and it doesn't feel the same to me.
The new threat, his strongest yet.
We could cut off the whole relationship. Now, if you did, what would happen? You'd save $500 billion.
China, but China
Asked
does
about
have
his
some accountability
relationship
here.
with Xi Jinping.
But they actually
now, I don't want
contacted
to
him as
speak to
soon as they knew
But
something was
Beijing
going
had
on
plenty
and let
to
him know what
say.
was happening.
State media labelling the commander-in-chief a giant baby on the brink of a meltdown, who was bluffing and acting tough toward China to win more support, warning severing ties may put world peace in a dangerous position.
Right now, I'm president of the United States. I'm not president of the world. I say it all the time. I want to make America great again.
But America's domestic response is also under the microscope.
Our window of opportunity is closing.
The government's former vaccine chief claiming he raised the alarm early this year about a shortage of ventilators, testing swabs and masks.
Yeah.
I'll never forget
Trump
the
was
emails I
warned
received. He said,
early on that there was a
we're in
problem,
deep.
and we had shortages.
The world
and
is.
that we was going to have problems.
And we need to act.
Rick
But he didn't
Bright
care.
says
He
his
didn't want to do
warnings were
anything
dismissed, and
because
so
of the
was
optics.
he.
He was afraid people would see it.
I never met him. I don't want to meet him, but I watched him, and he looks like an angry, disgruntled employee.
Disgruntled or
yeah,
not,
he met
Dr.
him,
Bright left Washington
and he
with a
probably
dire
talked to him, and he
prediction
didn't
that
like
the
what he had to say.
COVID-19 pandemic will only get worse here if the United States doesn't develop a national testing strategy.
Time is running out because the virus is still spreading everywhere.
Yeah, he tried to give him a warning. Another ad. These guys are making some pretty good money off of me. Oh yeah, the George Floyd protests, they
The
were
land of the
bad.
free.
And this happened under Trump, by the way.
In day
This is
4
what
of
he did.
anarchy. Atlanta, CNN headquarters and police under attack.
Threw something on fire, Chris, a firecracker.
It's firecrackers. Yeah, they should have done that.
Police cars smashed, torched.
They shouldn't have done that either.
Shops looted.
Whoever
National
did
Guard
those things
called
should be
in.
arrested.
Los Angeles, a single officer set upon
I don't know
trying
what that
to
young
make
man
an
did, but they're
arrest.
beating the
Bob
crap out of
starts
him. for
beating
nothing.
the officer. Look at that officer
Probably.
by himself there.
Dragged out, he collapses. Tonight, downtown shops are being looted.
See, now these
In
people are not there
Washington,
for protest.
the
Those
White
people are there
House
to steal
briefly
and
on
loot.
lockdown. Crowds surge barricades,
Some people are just legitimately there
delivering
to
fuel
protest
to the
and they get mad
president's
and get
front
out
door.
thing. They blame Trump. Oh,
A
yeah, they have
nationwide
Trump up
fire,
there.
and where the first match was lit, Minneapolis
I'm
looks
sorry, the
like
peaceful
and feels
protesters,
like
nothing wrong with
an
that.
active
They have every
battleground.
right to do it. They got to just do their stuff back at them, so what?
It's almost 8 o'clock.
See, they attack the peaceful protesters, causing the violence to happen later.
But as you can see,
If they would just leave the peaceful people alone, which they wouldn't do because they like to attack the peaceful people.
Throwing projectiles
Because, you know,
these police officers.
it's easier to attack peaceful people that are peacefully protesting than actually go after the people that are breaking stuff and doing violence.
Facing off against the National Guard, tear gas fills the street. It escalates
all this is
quickly
what was
in
going
front
on with
of
Trump
us.
was
In a matter of minutes, this went from a peaceful protest to absolute chaos. All of these demonstrators are marching because they have pushed back the National Guard. A major development just hours earlier, not enough.
I'm here to announce that former Minneapolis police officer Derek Chauvin is in custody.
The officer at the centre of it all charged with third-degree murder and manslaughter. For almost 9 minutes, Officer Derek Chauvin had his knee on George Floyd's neck as he pleaded, becoming unresponsive.
Yeah, they're not showing the video.
For another 2 minutes and 53 seconds, the officer kept holding him down. His charges identical to those against now jailed Minneapolis officer Muhammad Nur, who shot dead an Australian.
Straight up murder.
Hennepin County Attorney's Office is one of the few prosecutor offices in this country in the last 5 years to successfully prosecute a police officer for murder. And we did that on behalf of Justine Damon.
George Floyd and Derek Chauvin both worked security at the same nightclub. Staff say they would have crossed paths. Chauvin's wife publicly announcing today she's filed for divorce. But no charges yet for the other officers involved.
At that point, they hadn't
Mr.
done
Floyd
anything. But he murdered the man. There was absolutely no reason to do what he did.
George,
he was handcuffed. He was seduced. There was no reason to do what that.
Entitled to live in safety.
If you want change in America, go and register to vote. You are
register to vote. I agree.
We are better than
everybody should
One
register
arrest
to vote.
here only escalated tension.
And telling me why I'm under arrest, sir.
Even if I don't agree with what you did, why they arrested this guy?
There was a fear there, even just within my family, that I would not come out of that the same as how I went in.
Fear ingrained in black families for generations.
Even the things that we've taught them don't seem to work.
Many hope the anger will be heard, but change is a long, distant hope.
Unfortunately.
So basically it was another case of police brutality. In this case it was an African-American man in Minneapolis who was arrested and restrained by a police officer who held his knee on his throat. And famously his last words were, "I can't breathe," as he was held like that for 9 minutes and eventually died. It was outrageous when we first heard about it, but unfortunately not that uncommon to hear of, but it was when the vision came out and watching the full 9 minutes and seeing how long that man was restrained for, saying he couldn't breathe, he was calling for his mother. It was horrific to watch. It was an incredibly upsetting and harrowing vision. And once America saw that, it exploded. So Minneapolis exploded almost immediately. I
was handcuffed on the ground.
Scrambling to get crews there.
There was absolutely no reason to do what they were doing.
Almost exploded.
I mean, they could
there were
easily
riots,
have,
shops
got him up, put him in the
looted,
squad car and
buildings
go
were on
on.
fire,
Over
police
a
cars were
possible
getting rocks thrown at
counterfeit
them.
$20 bill. By the way, I never did hear whether or not that $20 was actually a
people were
counterfeit.
going to die in these
Nor did we hear where it came
and we
from,
also
if it
hadn't
was.
seen riots at this scale for such a
There
long
was
time.
no investigation
in the
because
United
they
States.
murdered the guy.
At the start, it very much
We
felt
never
like
found
a
out what
Minneapolis
the actual
riot, and
original
then
crime that
it
they
did
were
not
looking
take long
into
to
was
spring up in other
done.
places. I remember New York was pretty soon after.
I mean,
again, a liberal state.
How is that good
eventually
law
LA,
enforcement?
and then by the
That's
end,
not.
it was
That's bad law
everywhere.
enforcement.
I can't describe
Because
to you what it was like. There were
there's
3 of us
somebody
covering
out
the US
counterfeiting
trying to
$20
work out
bills,
where
still
to
passing
be.
them around
This
because
huge
they
country
didn't bother to find out
where
who they
like
were.
Every capital city in every state was on fire.
Because you murdered a guy that would have probably been a witness.
And people are running wild. An Amazon delivery van ransacked this LA jewelry store
that's when they were robbing,
so
people robbing
too these white
delivery vehicles. I was a little worried because I was doing deliveries at that time. Oh Lord, I was a little nervous.
That's not our message. That's not helping nothing.
Others, though, helping themselves to whatever they could carry.
This store had already been completely looted. Another one was being attacked here. That's what helped spark this response we've just seen within minutes. We've got sheriff's officers in full riot gear. Just beyond them, firefighters have just arrived to deal with a building on fire there. And we even have a Bearcat, an armoured vehicle in place here, and so many police and authorities to try and bring control back to this part of Santa Monica.
Shop owners frustrated, but ultimately understanding.
At least 100 people have passed by. They all have stopped and said, "We are sorry."
In Washington, handshakes
Majority of the
and
people
respect.
do not support this. Majority of the people don't.
From a president called on to
They don't want
calm
this
the
happening.
nation.
They don't.
Tweets,
They get mad
law
about
and
the people
order,
that do
fake
this.
news, and this. The United States
And he
of
did
America
absolutely
will be
nothing.
designating
He blamed
Antifa
Antifa.
as a
Wasn't
terrorist
Antifa doing it?
organization. Antifa, anti-fascist,
You don't even know what
the
Antifa
hard
is.
left,
That's just
Trump's
a
target for blame.
Radical militants that are coming out under cover of night, traveling across state lines,
using military-style
Yeah, some of
tactics
them
to
were,
burn down our cities.
With
Right,
the president
white nationalists
in
trying
lockdown,
to
his
stir
November
problems.
opponent, Joe
They got
Biden,
caught in it
met
too,
with
by the way.
potential voters.
You gotta get that community guy out of office, buddy.
Right?
Save us.
Right,
Save us, please.
But right now, the leaders are on the streets. A police chief kneeling in California.
See, that's what the
Solidarity
real
too
officer
in
would do.
Kansas City and
Show
New Jersey.
unity with the
Moments of
community.
Unity.
That's what
of
you need.
hope.
I took my helmet off and laid the
I
batons
should
down.
coin that.
I want to make this a parade, not a protest.
That should be absolutely.
That was a historic moment where
See,
people's
this sheriff
fears
actually gets it.
were listened to and actions were behind it, and that was the turning point.
And from the family of George Floyd, one question asked live on air to the boss of the 4 officers whose actions sparked the unrest.
I want to know if he's going to get justice for my brother and arrest all the officers.
And this is the Floyd family right now?
This is the Floyd family.
To the Floyd family, being silent or not intervening, to me, you're complicit.
I was in Florida working, and I got moved up to Washington, D.C. I was the closest there.
Yeah, George
So I
Floyd,
arrived, I think,
was
1
a
or 2 days
changing point
after
in
Minneapolis
this
had
country. He
happened.
did
The 1st of June, when we came
The man
out,
was, he wasn't a good
again,
man,
the
really
streets
not.
were just already
He did
packed.
bad
We
things
just
in
naturally
his
fell
life.
into a march that
But
was going from the
his
White House to the
legacy is
Capitol.
going to be
So we
not
joined
like
that
those things. It's
march,
going to be
stayed at the Capitol
what
for
happened
quite some
because of
time,
his
and then it
unjust
felt
death.
like it was just an organic
He did bad things, but he
impromptu
didn't deserve to die the way he
movement that
died.
turned around and went back to
He
the White
didn't
House, and we
actually do
walked
anything
back.
that was warranted of a
A
death
curfew
penalty.
of 7 p.m. had been announced that day because the last
even
night
if he was a drug addict
so
and everything before
extraordinary.
that,
So
doesn't
basically,
matter.
at nightfall, full curfew, everyone had
shouldn't
to be
have been choked to
inside.
death in the street
We were
by a
expecting to still
cop
be on air for
for no
sunrise at
reason.
7, and we were doing our 6 p.m. cross, which I think was about 8 a.m. here. And you could see the police gathering, didn't think much of it, of course. The curfew is about to be enforced. We were staying to the side with all the other media, exact same spot we had been the night before when we watched the police move through and enforce the curfews. We had no reason to expect that we would be in any way targeted or become a part of what was happening. Your goal as a journalist, as the media, is to never become a part of the story. It's the one thing you do not do. And at no point did we think that that was what was going to happen. All of a sudden, as I was on air, I could hear kind of yelling and movement, and again, we just were not expecting it because it was not time yet. And in my head, I kept thinking, it's too early. You know, it must just be a kerfuffle. There must be some protesters, you know, getting in the way of each other or something. And then all of a sudden, just the wall of police came and turned. I still remember them turning to look at us, and me thinking, not us, go that way.
Outside the White House, 30 minutes before curfew, police begin their attack.
We've just had to run about a block as police moved in. We've been fired at with rubber bullets. My cameraman has been hit. We've
They
also
started
seen
attacking
tear
the
gas
press
being
because
used.
they
Here we
didn't
go.
want the
They're
press
moving
there
through
to
again.
record
This
what
is
they were
exactly
getting
what
ready
it
to
looks
do.
like. Exactly what it looks like. We're
See, those protesters were not doing anything violent. Cops attacked them. Look, they're attacking the press. That's attacking the press. That's clearly a cameraman. He smashed the
Hit
camera.
with a shield in the stomach, a punch to the lens. Another officer lashes out with a baton as we run, trying to get out of
That
an early
was
surge.
an attack on the
Because
First
of that
Amendment
happening,
because
we
they're
got
trying to
effectively
suppress
pushed into the
what was
stampede.
being
So we
told.
were then
They didn't want
in with the
people to
protesters.
see what they were
when the
getting ready
idea
to
was
do.
we were meant to be observing and reporting from the sidelines.
That is,
and because of that, I was
that was one of
getting
those
hit
low
with rubber
points in our
bullets. I was getting hit with pepper
country.
spray. You know, these horrible things called pepper balls that they were just firing into the crowd.
Yeah,
And they fire them at one of
they
your
attack
legs,
peaceful
so you can't
protesters.
stand still,
When you
basically. So
attack
they're
the
pelting
peaceful
back your legs.
protesters, you're asking
But
for
when they
violence against
open, pepper spray
everybody.
comes out. So you can barely breathe. It's chaos. We're stuck in this crowd. And meanwhile, I'm still on air. You heard us yelling there that we were media, but they don't care. They are being indiscriminate at the moment. They chased us down that street, and as you see, they were firing these rubber bullets at everyone. There is tear gas, and now we are really surrounded by the police, and you really saw the way that they dealt with my cameraman,
give them
Tim.
an
They're
option of
quite
peaceful
violent,
or
and they do
protest.
not care
Things
who
turn
they're
to
targeting at the
violence.
moment.
That's how it works.
I felt like every time I got
You
up
won't
to say
listen
something,
to
I got
them when
knocked
they're being
over again
peaceful,
or
and
hit
you
with something
attack
else.
them when they're being
And you
peaceful.
just pop back up and keep speaking.
pretty much inviting the
but the police
violence.
just weren't stopping because that was their move. They were pushing the people out. So our main goal was we had to get out of there, but also finish our report. So you can see the vision of us. We're trying to get down low to get through this incredible crowd, but it just felt like we were completely stuck.
Hands up! Don't shoot!
The president is watching this and minutes from addressing his nation.
They had their hands up. They're showing we're not fighting. They're fighting back.
Amelia, we're going to go low and across the street now, okay?
Yeah.
On my shoulder.
Yeah.
With the crowd as we're driven blocks back, people around us have hands in the air as tear gas flies.
Eventually we got through and around a corner, and that was when I actually finally could turn to the camera and explain what had happened and how indiscriminate the police were being. If you think that they hit us with a microphone and a camera, you can just imagine what they were doing to some of these protesters who were still not breaking the law. It was still not the curfew. We took a minute to gather our breath, and then police on horseback came around the corner that we'd turned in, so we had to run again. We ended up sheltering in a shop that the window had been smashed out. We got inside and kind of let the crowds run past us.
4 minutes later, Donald Trump in the Rose Garden.
All Americans were rightly sickened and revolted by...
Turn back a little bit.
A corner, and that was when I actually finally could turn to the camera and explain what had happened and how indiscriminate the police were being. If you think that they hit us with a microphone and a camera, you can just imagine what they were doing to some of these protesters who were still not breaking the law. It was still not the curfew. We took a minute to gather our breath, and then police on horseback came around the corner that we'd turned in, so we had to run again. We ended up sheltering in a shop that the window had been smashed out. We got inside and kind of let the crowds run past us.
4 minutes later, Donald Trump in the Rose Garden.
All Americans were rightly sickened and revolted by the brutal death of George Floyd.
The sound of tear gas canisters behind him.
I will fight to protect you.
Yeah,
I am your president of law and order.
Night 7 of riots, the commander-in-chief came with an arsenal.
We will end it now. Today I have strongly recommended to every governor to deploy the National Guard in sufficient numbers that we dominate the streets. If a city or state refuses to take the actions that are necessary to defend the life and property of their residents, then I will deploy the United States military and quickly solve the problem for them.
A president vowing anarchists will be squashed.
These are acts of domestic terror. The destruction of innocent life.
Yeah, your people do that all the time.
And the spilling of innocent blood is an offense to humanity and a crime against God. And now I'm going to pay my respects to a very, very special place. Thank you very much.
Just minutes after he finished,
What's with the military, the United States military in our
police
streets?
clear the
He wants
street.
to turn us into a third world country where he is a dictator, where he can just do whatever he wants. He wants to copy Kim Jong-un,
Military police
his
with
lover,
rubber bullets.
that he gets letters from.
Protest until just now.
Forcibly cleared out.
I have no doubt that they knew we were media. In the least, we had camera equipment. We were screaming media repeatedly, and we were standing with the media. That's why there's such good vision of what happened. We were surrounded by the world's media, and all of a sudden they just turned on us. I think the fact it was live on air helped. I just had to keep speaking. I'm also
Trump
thinking
sent
of my
them out
parents
to,
back
first
home
people they
watching
went after
and
was the media.
thinking, you've got to get back up. They've got to see you get
You
back
notice
up.
that they attacked the media
They'll be
almost
terrified.
immediately. That
Also,
was
my
something they wanted
husband
to do.
was working in
They were told to
Minneapolis.
do.
I was out
Get
of
rid of the
contact with him
reporters.
because
We
he'd
can't
been
have
arrested
them
at
documenting
gunpoint.
this.
Our lives were falling apart, and I'm thinking, if he doesn't see me get back up, he's going to be beside himself. It was just an incredible moment to live through. Once we got out of the crowd ourselves, the crowd we never wanted to be in, we did feel a lot more safe. We ran a few more blocks, unfortunately in the opposite direction to our hotel, so we ended up very far away. By then, Donald Trump had walked out to the area we had been standing, and he was posing with the Bible.
That's the
and I'm
America
getting
that
told that
Trump
I can't see any
created.
vision at this stage. I'm getting told that through my ear, and I'm thinking that's what that was.
Oh, here's where he went to the
That's why they
church and
cleared
held the
it
Bible
so
upside down.
quickly and aggressively and early.
Look
It
at him
was
holding
for
that Bible upside down. He's never touched a Bible in his life up to that point. I don't
Silenced
think.
as right on curfew,
You know he
the
doesn't read 'em.
president appeared,
He doesn't know what's in it.
leaving the White House
Just
grounds.
he just had the
President, your
priest of that
thoughts right
church
now?
tear gas,
He
by the way, to
crossed
get him out of the way
street
so
to
he
the
could go do
Church
his
of the
little
Presidents, and before
hold
a
a Bible
boarded
upside
up
down
building
stunt.
held up a Bible.
It won't take long. It's not going to take long.
Calling in his team for a photo.
We have the greatest country in the world. Thank you very much, everybody. We're going to keep it nice and safe.
He sanctioned the use of tear gas by police officers in riot gear to clear the church guard. I am outraged.
Yeah.
I just can't believe what my eyes have seen
This is the
tonight.
priest of
On
that
an earlier
church.
phone call, he'd blasted state governors as weak.
You look like a bunch of jerks. Just to dominate.
Democrat states have already rejected his military offer.
A force on the ground is both unsustainable militarily, it's also unsustainable socially because it's the antithesis of how we live.
The National Guard now already on White House grounds, and at least 23 states rallies into the night under close watch.
My main outrage
They did
was
this
not
video
just
before he
how we
was,
were treated, obviously
named as the VP.
exercising our First Amendment right to
So-
a free press, which is something that Americans hold very dear. The fact that we got treated like that, I think, illustrated how badly some of those protesters were treated. I'm not saying they were all doing the right thing. I did see people throw water bottles. I saw people antagonize police, absolutely. I didn't see anyone do anything that warranted how hard some of those people were hit or how badly they were treated. And at the end of the day, they came in early. If that had have happened at 7 p.m, maybe we would all look back at it with a different viewpoint, because everyone was told at 7 p.m. it's illegal for you to be here. But it wasn't 7 p.m. yet. And you can even hear that on our tape. I say repeatedly, it's too early. They've come in too early, thinking it's some sort of mistake, and then realizing that it wasn't. It was very intentional. It was a photo op.
Whoa!
Hours
Notice
after
how different
curfew,
they get treated when it's Black Lives Matter protesters.
looters beaten
Now,
and rounded
I
up
will
by
be the first to say,
protesters.
anybody that did like that, the violence, I saw him just attack them.
Lockdowns
no reason.
ignored
He
in
should
the
be arrested.
face of
That's an
immense
assault.
force in the capital.
It is now after curfew, but the only
Now it's
police
after
that we
curfew.
can see are behind this fence. On the other hand, we've seen hundreds of protesters flooding the scene, wanting to be here for this moment.
Before a fortified Lincoln
Yeah, this
Memorial
was,
and a padlocked White House.
This is just the first part of this. The second part's
The
2 hours.
crowd is defiant as night
We're only
came,
up to June.
facing
I'm
off
assuming
against a
June's
wall
gonna be
of
the last
arms,
month they do. Since they have the second part
who
was
start
from
firing
July to
through the
December.
fence
Don't be doing that. It causes problems. And panic.
on those who won't leave. Hollywood Boulevard. Police surge early, standing on the stars. National Guard boots on the Walk of Fame and Sunset Boulevard. Reporter Paul Caddock there as lockdown loomed.
Again, how quickly things can change. Just a few minutes after Hollywood Boulevard was full of protesters, peaceful protesters, something has happened, and now it is full of police.
I can't breathe! I can't breathe!
As curfews
that was
roll
what
across
George
the country,
Floyd's last words
city
were, "I can't
after
breathe."
city rallied back. From Broadway to Portland, protesters filled the streets. And tonight, for hours, peaceful marches were left to move. New York's 11 p.m. curfew last night, disastrously late. America's largest police department lost control.
The NYPD and the mayor did not do their job last night. Look at the videos. It was a disgrace. I believe that.
Tonight, lockdown came at 8. New York's refused the National Guard, choosing to stamp out violence itself. Shifting tactics, mostly avoiding combat, the night after President Trump threatened military domination. Today, he drove past protesters on his way to another religious moment at the shrine of St. Paul II.
Oh,
With
yeah,
the
he's
First
definitely
Lady,
dishonoring
a
that.
photo opportunity
Oh,
slammed
look
by
how much she
religious
looks like she
leaders
hates him.
for a second day.
The president held up the Bible at St. John's Church yesterday. I just wish he opened it once in a while.
Asked to comment on his neighbour's violence, Canada's Prime Minister took 20 long seconds to find the words.
We all watch in horror and consternation what's going on in the United States.
Into the night, police rounded up lawbreakers.
They're just going one person at a time.
It's not over, but night 8 is the calmest so far.
Well, they won't let
I
him
was
peacefully
subpoenaed as part of
protest.
an
They
investigation
wouldn't allow
into,
it.
it was called the Lafayette Square incident, so exactly what happened in that moment. So not the broader protests over the week, just that moment where that square was cleared for the photo op. It was myself, a priest from the church where Donald Trump held up the Bible, a protester, and then the Republicans had called a legal expert basically to say whether what the police had done was unlawful or not. It was terrifying. This was still a country that was incredibly polarised. My face had been plastered all over the news for weeks with vision of me getting hit, constantly used. I was getting death threats and abuse on Twitter. There was real concerns about me going back to DC and just being out in public, let alone walking into Congress. But also it was an important story to tell. That's what I was there for that day, was to report what happened, and I wasn't going to let that opportunity be taken away from me. Also, meanwhile, the Australian government had called for a full investigation, had registered its unhappiness with what had happened. I didn't think it was fair to ask for an investigation, then when they do one, not show up to tell them what happened.
As a reporter, I have no interest in becoming the story, but over recent weeks, many of us have been left with no choice. I've been shocked to see how many journalists have been attacked, beaten and detained just for doing their jobs.
The attack on the Australian journalists appeared entirely unjustified and unlawful.
So, like all things, it took some time, but even on the day that the lawyer for the Republicans conceded that the police, in the least with their treatment of us, had acted unlawfully, it was then found that they had, on a whole, acted unlawfully that day by moving in early, and that the warnings that they claimed were given were not given. I guess because I lived through it, I couldn't see any other result as a reasonable person. I think it was nice for something to officially say that we didn't do anything wrong. We weren't in the wrong place. We weren't trying to get attention, because it's something that people wanted to say.
As a reporter,
about
she
us,
had a
and we
right
don't
to be
stand
there.
there. You think
First
that's
Amendment
when
right
we were told to
protections,
stand,
in
we were
fact.
doing the right thing. So for them to come out and say, actually, you were doing entirely the right thing. You were standing where you were supposed to. You were doing exactly what you'd done the night before, and nothing happened.
Yeah.
And it was those two police
She's just
officers who
there to
acted
report
unlawfully
what's
by
happening.
turning on you.
That is a reporter's job. That's
There
what
was
they're
some
supposed to do.
indication.
That's journalism. Of course, this is the end of the video. Thanks for watching. Thanks for putting any likes on. Thanks for any comments anybody wants to make. I appreciate it. Like, share, comment. Let me know what you think. We got one more part of this. It's a big one. It's 2 hours long. I'm gonna try to do it tomorrow, probably early in the morning, because I do want to have to work in the afternoon or evening. Actually, it's Friday. That's when I make my money. So yeah, this was interesting. Let me know what you think. What was said here. Was there some stuff you think they missed? I think they missed some stuff. Personally, I added in the thing where they apparently didn't look into some things, details that they didn't think was important. I guess because it was earlier in the presidency and they didn't bring it up, but it should have been addressed, I believe, in this documentary, because it is extremely relevant that Trump fired the pandemic response team. And he said, well, we can hire them back. Well, when your house is already burned down, hiring back the fire department doesn't work. That's just the way it works. We hire a fire department to make sure they're there when the house catches on fire, not after the fact. Well, the house is on fire. Maybe we should go out and hire some people for the fire department. How's that work out? Now, that was a good example, by the way, in the video I posted, showed in the middle of this. But anyway, thanks for watching. I'm going to add a few more stickers in. I hope that maybe made this thing a little more entertaining. I'm going to try to post some clips from this, and I have a few clips from the day 2 DNC. I worked during a DNC convention, so I'm not going to be able to post anything from that. I'm not going to be able to do a live stream. Wished I could. But unfortunately, timing doesn't work for me. So, and there's Pixie. She's late. You're too late. I'm leaving. Let's end this out. And here we go. Oh yeah, I like this little thing I found. I forgot I'd had. And my outro. Oh, here we go.
Then I'm good. Let's go.